Jaiwen stood in the center of the massive chamber, her hands clasped behind her back as she waited for the council to finish their private discussion. The Concord Assembly Hall was enormous, built to accommodate thousands of different species. Some members floated in anti-gravity fields, others rested in tanks of liquid, and a few sat on traditional chairs like humans did. The air smelled strange, filtered and processed to be breathable for everyone but perfect for no one. She had just finished presenting humanity's newest achievement. The quantum communication network could send messages instantly across any distance. No more waiting days or weeks for signals to travel between stars. It was revolutionary technology, something that could change how the entire galaxy communicated. Jaiwen had expected praise, perhaps even admiration. Instead, she got silence. Speaker Verith finally spoke, his crystalline body refracting the chamber's lights into rainbow patterns across the walls. His voice was cold and sharp, like ice cracking. The human delegation presents interesting work. Primitive, of course, but interesting for such a young species. Primitive. The word hung in the air like an insult. Jaiwen kept her expression neutral, but, beside her, she felt Hyun stiffen. The military liaison had warned her that the council looked down on humanity, but she hadn't quite believed it until now. Behind them, Mira shifted nervously, the young diplomat's first time in the assembly hall. Verith continued without waiting for a response. However, the council has more pressing matters to discuss. We move to Resolution 7 Alpha. He gestured, and a holographic document appeared in the air above the chamber floor. The human species has expanded rapidly in recent decades. Too rapidly, some would say. Your military forces have grown beyond what is necessary for simple defense. Jaiwen felt her stomach drop as she read the resolution. Speaker Verith, this resolution demands that humanity surrender all independent military vessels. You want us to disarm completely? Not completely, Verith said, and several council members made sounds that might have been laughter. You may keep system defense platforms around your home world. But, your deep space fleet must be transferred to Concord control. You will fall under our protection protocols. We don't need protection, Hyun said, stepping forward. Jaiwen put a hand on his arm, but he continued anyway. Humanity has never threatened any Concord member. We've followed every rule, every regulation. Your species is volatile, another council member said, a floating mass of tentacles that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Aggressive. Unpredictable. You have had 3 major wars in the last 2 centuries alone. Civil conflicts, Jaiwen said carefully. Internal matters that we resolved ourselves. We've been nothing but peaceful in our dealings with the Concord. Veritha's crystalline face remained expressionless. The council has made its decision. You have 48 hours to consult with your government. We expect compliance. He raised one arm, and the session was dismissed. Jaiwen led her delegation out of the chamber, maintaining her diplomatic composure until the doors sealed behind them. The corridor outside was empty, their footsteps echoing on the polished floor. Mira looked like she might cry. Hyun's face was red with anger. They can't do this, he said. They have no right. They have every right, Jaiwen said quietly. We signed the Concord Charter. We agreed to abide by council decisions. Then, we leave, Hyun said. We withdraw from the Concord. Jaiwen shook her head. It's not that simple. 3 colony worlds depend on Concord trade routes. Our economy is integrated with theirs. If we leave, they can cut us off completely. They walked in silence back to the human embassy section. Jaiwen immediately sent an encrypted message to Earth, marked urgent. Then, she sat down at her desk and put her head in her hands. 200 years of careful diplomacy, and it had come to this. Hyun disappeared for several hours. When he returned, his expression was grim. "You need to see this," he said, activating a secure data pad. "I have contacts in Concord security. They owed me a favor." The files he showed her made everything worse. The Council had been planning this for months. Resolution 7 Alpha wasn't a response to any human action. It was preemptive. More damning were the secondary documents, notes from closed Council sessions. 3 human colony worlds had already been selected for administrative oversight. That was Concord language for occupation. "They're going to take our colonies," Mira whispered, reading over Jaiwan's shoulder. "Even if we agree to disarm, they're still going to take them." Jaiwan kept reading. The notes were frank in a way public statements never were. Council members discussed humanity like a problem to be solved, a potential threat to be neutralized before it became dangerous. One note made her blood run cold: human technological advancement rate exceeds all projections. In 50 years, they may rival the oldest Concord species. Better to act now while we maintain overwhelming superiority. They weren't afraid of what humanity had done. They were afraid of what humanity might become. That evening, Jaiwan attended a reception for minor diplomats, the kind of social function that she normally found tedious but politically necessary. She moved through the crowd with a glass of something that passed for wine in Concord stations, smiling and making small talk. Near the refreshment station, she overheard a group of council members talking among themselves. They didn't notice her standing nearby, partially hidden by a decorative plant. "The humans actually thought we'd be impressed by their little communication toy," one said, a reptilian creature with scales that shifted colors. "They're useful enough," another replied. "Good engineers, hard workers. They've built some of our finest mining stations." "Exactly. Useful labor, nothing more. Better they understand their place now." "Pet species," the first one said, and they all made sounds of amusement. "That's what they are. Pets who've forgotten they need masters." Jaiwan set her glass down carefully and walked away before she said something that would end her diplomatic career. Her hands were shaking. She'd spent 15 years representing humanity in Concord space, believing they were building genuine partnerships, real friendships between species. She'd been naive. Back in her quarters, she composed a message to Earth Defense Command. Her fingers hesitated over the keys. What she was about to write could change everything. But, after what she'd seen, what she'd heard, there was no other choice. "The Council has shown its hand," she wrote. "We are not partners here. We are not even junior members. We are prisoners waiting to be caged. They fear our potential, so they move to crush us while they still can. Recommend immediate consultation with the Security Council. We may need to consider all options, including withdrawal from the Concord." She encrypted the message and sent it. Then, she sat in the dark of her quarters, looking out at the stars beyond the station's viewport. Somewhere out there was Earth, humanity's home world. Somewhere out there were human colonies full of people who trusted their leaders to keep them safe and free. Jaiwan had always believed that joining the Concord was humanity's greatest achievement, the moment they truly became part of the galactic community. Now she wondered if it had been their greatest mistake. The Concord didn't want partners. They wanted servants. The question was what humanity would do about it. Doyen stood at the head of the long table in Geneva, looking at the faces of the United Earth Government Security Council. Every member was present, either in person or via hologram. The room was silent except for the soft hum of environmental systems. Outside the windows, Lake Geneva reflected the afternoon sun, peaceful and calm. Inside this room, they were deciding humanity's future. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said the representative from the African Union. "The Concord wants us to give them our entire deep space fleet. Every ship larger than a patrol boat. And, even if we do that, they plan to occupy 3 of our colonies anyway." "That's correct," Hyun said. He'd returned to Earth with Jaiwan 12 hours ago, and he looked exhausted. The occupation plans were already drawn up before they even presented Resolution 7 Alpha. This isn't about our military being a threat. It's about control. They're afraid of us, Isul said. The admiral of the Seoul Defense Fleet was a small woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Not afraid of what we are now. Afraid of what we might become. Doyen pulled up a chart on the room's main display. This shows technological advancement rates for various species over their first 3 centuries of space travel. Humanity's rate is here. He pointed to a line that shot upward steeply. For comparison, this is the Concord average. The other line climbed gradually, almost flat in comparison. We advanced too fast, Yuna said. The public relations director had been quiet until now, studying the data. In 200 years, we've accomplished what takes most species 2,000. That's what frightens them. So what are our options? Doyen asked. I want to hear from everyone. The debate started immediately. Some argued for compliance. The Concord had thousands of member species, resources beyond counting, technologies developed over millennia. Fighting them would be suicide. Better to accept limited sovereignty than risk total destruction. Others argued for resistance. Giving up their military meant giving up any ability to defend themselves. Once the Concord had their fleet, they could impose any terms they wanted. Humanity would be helpless. There is a third option, Doyen said quietly. Withdrawal. We leave the Concord entirely. The room erupted. Half the council members started talking at once. Doyen let them argue for several minutes before calling for order. I know what that would mean, he said. Economic isolation. Trade embargoes. Possible military action. But, I want everyone to understand what compliance means too. It means the end of human independence. Forever. Taejin cleared his throat. The chief scientist rarely spoke at these meetings, preferring his laboratory to politics. Before we make any decision, there's something you should know about the quantum communication network. He activated his own display, showing complex equations and diagrams. We told the Concord it was just a communication system. That was true, but incomplete. The real breakthrough is what the network enables. We can coordinate fleet movements across unlimited distances with perfect timing. No other species has this capability. Isul leaned forward, suddenly interested. You mean our ships could act as a single unit even if they're light years apart? Exactly. An enemy might have superior numbers, better weapons, more advanced shields. But, they can't coordinate like we can. They can't be everywhere at once the way we can. Taejin smiled slightly. The Concord doesn't know this yet. They saw a communication device. They didn't see a military revolution. How much of an advantage does this give us? Doyen asked. Against the Concord? Maybe 5-to-1 odds. One of our ships can fight like 5 of theirs because of coordination and tactical flexibility. Taejin shrugged. Maybe better. We haven't tested it in real combat. Hyun pulled up another file. There's something else you need to see. 3 other species have tried to leave the Concord in the past century. The records made for grim reading. The first species had their trade routes blocked, their ships turned away from Concord stations. Within 2 years, their economy collapsed. They rejoined the Concord under worse terms than before. The second species had tried to resist economically. The Concord simply waited them out, offering aid to any colonies that agreed to separate from their home government. The species fractured, and the pieces were absorbed into the Concord individually. The third species had actually fought back. Concord peacekeepers arrived to restore order and protect civilian populations. The war lasted 6 months. It ended with complete Concord occupation and the species government dissolved entirely. They've done this before, Doyen said. They know how to break species that try to leave. But those species didn't have our advantages, Isul said. She was studying the tactical data from Tajin's presentation. They didn't have instantaneous coordination. They didn't have our industrial capacity or our innovation rate. The Concord has never faced an opponent like us. This isn't a war game, Yuna said sharply. We're talking about real people dying. Our people. I know that, Isul said. But, we're also talking about freedom. What's the point of survival if we spend the rest of human history as the Concord servants? The debate continued for hours. They broke for dinner, then, resumed. Arguments were made, refuted, made again in different forms. Data was analyzed from every angle. Doyen let everyone speak as much as they needed to. A decision this important couldn't be rushed. Finally, as midnight approached, he called for a vote. The question before us is simple. Do we accept Resolution 7 Alpha and remain in the Concord under their terms? Or do we invoke Article 12 of the Concord Charter and withdraw as an independent sovereign species? They voted by show of hands. One by one, hands rose for withdrawal. When the count was finished, it was unanimous. Doyen felt something tight in his chest release. They were in agreement. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Then, it's decided, he said. We leave the Concord. Isul, begin preparations to recall all military assets to human-controlled space. Yuna, start drafting the public announcement. Tajin, I want a full assessment of our technological capabilities and what we'll need to develop independently. Hyun, work with our diplomats to coordinate the withdrawal of all human personnel from Concord facilities. He paused, looking at each of them. This is going to be difficult. The Concord will push back hard. They'll try to punish us, maybe try to force us back. We need to be ready for anything. What about our people in Concord space? Someone asked. Scientists, traders, civilians living on Concord stations. We bring them all home, Doyen said firmly. Every last one. No one gets left behind. The meeting adjourned at 1 a.m. Doyen stayed in the conference room after everyone else had left, standing at the window and looking out at the dark lake. In a few hours, he would address humanity. He would tell billions of people that their government had chosen an uncertain future over a certain cage. He thought about Jaiwan's message, her description of how the council members talked about humans. Pet species. Useful labor. The words made him angry, but they also made him certain. The Concord had made its choice when it decided humans were too dangerous to be free. Now humanity would make its own choice. Doyen picked up his communication tablet and began writing his speech. People of Earth and all human colonies, he started. Today, your government faced a decision that will shape our future for generations to come. He wrote through the night, choosing each word carefully. This wasn't just an announcement. It was a declaration of independence. Humanity had come to the stars seeking friendship, seeking a place among the community of sentient beings. They had found something else instead. Now they would build what they had been looking for. Not as the Concord's pets, but as free people charting their own path among the stars. The sun was rising over Geneva when he finished. Doyen read through the speech one final time, then sent it to Yuna for preparation. In 6 hours, he would broadcast to every human world, every station, every ship. In 6 hours, humanity would know they were walking away from the Concord. In 6 hours, everything would change. Jaiwan walked back into the Concord Assembly Hall for the last time. The chamber was packed, every council seat filled. News of Earth's emergency session had spread through Concord space like wildfire. Everyone knew something big was coming. Vareth waited at the center podium, his crystalline body reflecting light in sharp angles. Ambassador Jaiwan. Has your government reached a decision regarding Resolution 7 Alpha? We have, Speaker Vareth. Jaiwan's voice was steady, though her heart was pounding. She'd rehearsed this moment a dozen times on the flight back to the station. The United Earth government has carefully considered the Council's resolution. After thorough debate and consultation with our people, we must respectfully decline. The chamber went silent. Then, the noise started, dozens of species talking at once in languages Jaiwan's translator could barely keep up with. Vareth raised a hand for silence. You decline. Ambassador, this was not a request. This was a council mandate. I understand that, Speaker. Which is why Earth has decided to invoke Article 12 of the Concord Charter. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Concord as a full member. We will maintain observer status for 30 days to facilitate the transition, then, cease all official participation. The chamber erupted again. This time Vareth couldn't quiet them. Council members were shouting, some in anger, others in what might have been surprise or even approval. Jaiwan stood calmly at the podium, waiting. This is unacceptable, Vareth finally said, his voice cutting through the noise like crystal breaking. You cannot simply leave. Your economy depends on Concord trade. Your colonies exist along Concord routes. You need us. Perhaps, Jaiwan said. Or perhaps the Concord needs humanity more than you've been willing to admit. Regardless, the decision is made. We will not surrender our sovereignty. We will not become your protected species. We choose independence. She turned and walked out. Behind her, the council dissolved into chaos. Mira followed close behind, and Hyun brought up the rear, his hand resting on his sidearm though he knew he wouldn't need it. Not yet, anyway. The real work began immediately. Minji, humanity's chief trade negotiator, had her hands full. There were hundreds of contracts to dissolve, thousands of agreements to terminate. Human companies doing business in Concord space had to liquidate assets, collect debts, and extract themselves from partnerships. It was a legal and logistical nightmare. We're losing billions, one corporate representative complained during a video conference. The Concord is refusing to honor our contracts. They're seizing assets, calling it administrative protection. Document everything, Minji told them. Every seized asset, every broken contract. We'll need records for when this is over. When this is over. The representative laughed bitterly. You think they're going to pay us back? I think eventually the Concord will need us again, Minji said. And, when they do, we'll remember who honored their agreements and who didn't. On Kepler 442, Governor Yunji faced a different problem. 3 Concord ships appeared in orbit, broadcasting on all frequencies. This is Concord Peacekeeper Squadron 14. We're here to maintain order during the transition period. Governor Yunji, we're sending down a diplomatic team. Yunji looked at her defense coordinator. The colony had a few patrol ships, nothing that could stand up to Concord peacekeepers. But, she'd received clear instructions from Earth, no Concord personnel on human soil. Peacekeeper Squadron, this is Governor Yunji. We appreciate your concern, but it's unnecessary. Order is maintained. We respectfully deny your request to land. There was a long pause. Governor, we have authorization from the Council to ensure the safety of this transition. And, I have authorization from Earth to maintain our sovereignty. You are not welcome here. Please maintain orbit or depart the system. The standoff lasted for 3 tense days. The Concord ship stayed in orbit, clearly waiting for orders. Yunji kept her people calm, but everyone on the colony watched the sky nervously. If the peacekeepers decided to land by force, there wasn't much the colony could do to stop them. On the third day, the ships left without explanation. Yunji found out why an hour later when Earth Defense Command sent her a message: "Well done. Fleet assets are being repositioned to cover all colonies. You won't face the next challenge alone." Captain Sunho of the ESS Horizon learned that lesson firsthand. His ship was 6 light-years from the nearest human outpost, conducting a routine survey mission, when 3 Concord patrol vessels dropped out of hyperspace around him. "Earth Vessel Horizon, this is Concord Patrol Group 7. You are ordered to return to Concord space immediately and submit to inspection." Sunho looked at his first officer, a woman named Hannah who'd been with him for 5 years. "Thoughts?" "We're in neutral space," Hannah said. "They have no jurisdiction here. But, they have 3 ships to our 1. Concord Patrol Group 7, this is Captain Sunho of the ESS Horizon. We are in neutral territory conducting legitimate survey operations. We decline your order. Captain, you are no longer protected by Concord law. Return to Concord space or face the consequences." The patrol vessels powered up their weapons. Sunho could see the energy signatures on his sensors. His own shields came online automatically, but the Horizon was a survey ship, not a warship. In a straight fight, they'd last maybe 5 minutes. "Hannah, activate the quantum network. Emergency beacon." She looked surprised but did as he ordered. The quantum communication system lit up, sending an instantaneous signal to Earth Defense Command. 4 minutes later, Sunho's sensors went crazy. 4 human destroyers appeared out of hyperspace in perfect formation around the horizon, so precisely positioned they could have been painted there. The lead destroyer opened a channel. "Concord Patrol Group 7, this is Commander Juno of the ESS Defiant. You are threatening a human vessel in neutral space. Power down your weapons immediately." Sunho watched his screens as the Concord ships hesitated. They were still analyzing how 4 human ships had appeared so quickly, so precisely. The quantum coordination network was supposed to be just a communication system. They'd had no idea it could do this. The Concord vessels powered down and jumped away without another word. Juno's face appeared on Sunho's screen. "You okay, Captain?" "Thanks to you. That was impressive timing." "That's the point," Juno said with a slight smile. "The Concord thinks of space in terms of who controls which region. We're teaching them that we can be anywhere, anytime. Makes them think twice about pushing us around." Back on Earth, Doyen watched the reports come in. The Concord had begun economic sanctions. Human goods were banned from Concord markets. Trade routes through Concord space were closed to human ships. Several species that depended on human manufacturing were already complaining about shortages. "They're trying to strangle us economically," Yuna said during their daily briefing. "Public opinion in some colonies is turning. People are scared." "Of course they're scared," Doyen said. "Change is scary. But, show them the alternative. Show them what compliance would have meant." The propaganda war was in full swing. The Concord broadcast messages about humanity's recklessness, their danger to galactic stability. Yuna countered with the truth, releasing the documents Hyun had obtained showing the Council's real intentions. "They plan to occupy our colonies even if we surrendered our fleet," she said in a public broadcast. "They called us pets. Useful labor. This isn't about safety. It's about control." Not everyone in the Concord agreed with the Council's approach. 3 smaller species, ones that had always been treated as second-class members, quietly reached out to Minji. The conversations were careful, coded, but the message was clear: they wanted to trade with humanity. Secretly, for now, but trade nonetheless. "Why?" Minji asked one of them, a trader from a species whose name translated roughly as, the soft speakers. Because you did what we've wanted to do for decades, the traitor said. You walked away. You proved it was possible. The council is furious, but they're also scared. If you succeed, others will follow. And, if we fail, then, we all stay in our cages. But, at least you tried. The last shuttle departed from the Concord Assembly Hall station on a Tuesday morning, Earth time. Jaiwan was on it, along with the remaining human diplomatic staff. She looked back at the massive station through the viewport as they pulled away. Regrets? Mira asked softly. Some, Jaiwan admitted. I believed in what the Concord was supposed to be. A community of equals, all species working together. It was a beautiful idea. But, it wasn't real. No. It was a hierarchy with better manners than most. The old species on top, the young species serving them. We just refused to accept our place. The shuttle turned toward human space, toward home. Behind them, the Concord would continue as it had for thousands of years. Ahead of them was uncertainty, danger, and freedom. Jaiwan settled back in her seat. Do you know what my last words to Verith were? Not the official ones in the assembly hall. Mira shook her head. I told him, we came seeking equals. We found tyrants. History will remember who chose freedom. Jaiwan smiled slightly. He didn't have a response to that. Do you think we'll make it? Really? I think we have to, Jaiwan said. Because if we don't, no one else will ever try. 6 months after the withdrawal, things were getting difficult. Isil stood in the command center of Earth Defense Headquarters, staring at a map of human space. Red markers showed Concord ships positioned along every major route in and out of their territory. They called it a quarantine zone for galactic security. Everyone knew it was a blockade. 3 successful runs this week. The new stealth coating works better than expected. We're getting about 60% of critical supplies through. 60% isn't enough. No ma'am, but it's better than nothing. On Earth, protests were growing. People stood outside government buildings demanding a return to the Concord. The signs said things like, our children are starving and pride isn't worth poverty. Yuna watched the crowds through her office window. How bad is it really? She asked her deputy. Bad enough. Some colonies are genuinely struggling. But, a lot of this is being amplified by Concord agents. They're funding the protests, organizing the demonstrations. They want us to think everyone wants to go back. Do they? Some do. Maybe 20% based on our polling. The rest are willing to endure if they think we can make it through. Then, we need to show them we can make it through. Yuna authorized the release of new information. Tajan's research division had successfully replicated or improved most of the critical technologies humanity had been importing from Concord space. The medical supplies could be manufactured locally now. The rare minerals had substitutes that worked almost as well. We're not just surviving, Yuna told reporters. We're innovating. Every problem the blockade creates, we're solving. In 5 years, we'll be more self-sufficient than any Concord species. But, the message was hard to sell when children were sick and medicines were rationed. Doyen spent his days balancing resources, redirecting supplies, trying to keep every colony functioning. He'd lost weight, and his staff said he wasn't sleeping enough. You need to rest, his chief of staff told him. I'll rest when this is over, Doyen said, signing another emergency allocation order. The private message from Verith arrived on a secure channel. Just text, no video. The words were simple, this doesn't have to continue. Return to the Concord under revised terms. You keep limited military forces. You accept Concord observers on major vessels. Your colonies accept advisory councils with our representatives. Trade resumes immediately. No one else has to suffer. Doyen read it 3 times. It was tempting. The suffering was real. The shortages were real. He could end it with one word. His response was just as simple: we didn't leave to negotiate. We left because negotiation with those who see us as property is impossible. 2 weeks later, a research station near the edge of human space exploded. 47 scientists died. The official Concord statement expressed condolences and suggested the reactor failure was due to poor human maintenance standards. Taejin examined the data personally. This wasn't an accident. Someone sabotaged the reactor's cooling system. The failure pattern is too precise. Can you prove it? Doyen asked. Not in a way the Concord would accept. They'll deny everything. Then, we document it and move on. But, we remember. A month after that, a colony transport carrying 300 people disappeared between 2 human systems. No distress signal, no debris field, nothing. It was as if the ship had simply vanished. Concord ships were in that sector, Hyun reported. Our long-range sensors picked them up the day before the transport went missing. Did anyone see what happened? No. But, the timing is suspicious. The incidents continued. Always deniable, always explainable as accidents or coincidences. But, the pattern was clear. The Concord was applying pressure, seeing how much humanity could take before they broke. The breaking point came at New Gyeongju. Governor Yoonji was in her office when the alert came. 8 Concord ships had entered orbit, twice as many as the last time. The lead ship was broadcasting a message on repeat. This is Concord Fleet Commander Taivash. The Council has determined that New Gyeongju Colony is in a state of humanitarian crisis due to medical and resource shortages. We are here to provide aid and establish protective administration. Governor Yoonji, you have 24 hours to accept our assistance or face intervention under Concord Emergency Protocol 9. Yoonji immediately called Earth. Doyen's face appeared on her screen, looking exhausted. I heard, he said before she could speak. We're already mobilizing. How long until you get here? The fleet can be there in 6 hours. Can you hold them off that long? Yoonji looked at her defense coordinator. Can we? They haven't powered weapons yet, he said. If they're following Concord rules, they have to give you the full 24 hours before taking action. That's the plan, Doyen said. Make them wait. Stall however you can. We're coming. ISUL had been preparing for this moment since the blockade began. Every human warship had coordinates for New Gyeongju pre-programmed into their navigation systems. Every captain knew the rally point, the formation patterns, the timing. All ships, she broadcast on the quantum network. Execute contingency 7. Jump in 90 seconds. The quantum coordination system was about to face its first real test. Ships from Earth, from Mars, from patrol routes light years away, all had to arrive at the same moment in perfect formation. If the timing was off by even a few seconds, the effect would be ruined. ISUL counted down in her head. At 0, space around New Gyeongju lit up with jump flares. On the surface, Yoonji watched through the observation screens. One moment there were 8 Concord ships in orbit. The next moment, there were 32 human warships surrounding them in a perfect sphere. They'd appeared simultaneously, their positions so precise it looked like a choreographed dance. Commander Taivash's voice came over the emergency channel, and, for the first time, he sounded uncertain. Human fleet, this is Concord Fleet Command. You are interfering with a legitimate humanitarian mission. This is Admiral ISUL of the Seoul Defense Fleet. New Gyeongju has not requested assistance. Your presence is not authorized. You have 1 hour to withdraw from this system. We have orders from the Council. And, I have orders from Earth. Your ships are outnumbered and outpositioned. I would prefer to resolve this peacefully, but we will defend our colonies. The standoff lasted for 6 days. The Concord ship stayed in orbit, neither advancing nor retreating. The human fleet maintained their positions, weapons powered but not locked. Ships rotated in and out, fresh crews replacing tired ones, but the formation never changed. On Earth, the world held its breath. Every screen showed the orbital standoff. Commentators debated what would happen if shots were fired. This would be the first major conflict in Concord space in 400 years. Doyen didn't sleep for the entire 6 days. He stayed in the command center, monitoring every transmission, every sensor reading. Yuna sat with him, watching the public reaction across human space. The protests stopped, she said quietly. What? The protests demanding we rejoin the Concord. They stopped the moment our fleet appeared at New Jiangju. People are rallying behind us now. On the 6th day, the Concord ships powered down and jumped away. Verith issued a statement calling it a tactical redeployment to avoid unnecessary escalation. But everyone in the galaxy saw what had really happened. The Concord had blinked. Isol returned to Earth to a hero's welcome. People lined the streets as her transport made its way to headquarters. But she felt no triumph, only exhaustion. We won this round, she told Doyen in private. But they'll try again. Different tactics, different pressure points. I know. But we proved something important today. What's that? That we can defend ourselves. That we won't be pushed around. The Concord thought we'd crumble under pressure. Instead, we stood firm. Within a month, the quarantine zone quietly ended. Concord ships stopped turning away human vessels at the borders. Trade routes reopened, though the Concord made it clear they were doing this voluntarily, not because of any pressure. They're saving face, Yuna explained to reporters. They can't admit we forced them to back down. So they're pretending this was always their plan. Does it matter? A reporter asked. Not really. What matters is human ships can move freely again. We're not trapped anymore. Yunji stood on the observation deck of New Jiangju's main station, watching cargo ships come and go. The colony had received 3 major supply shipments in the last week. The medical shortage was over. Children were getting treatment. She thought about those 6 days when Concord ships hung in the sky like a threat. She thought about the moment the human fleet appeared, perfectly synchronized, overwhelming in their precision. We did it, her deputy said, standing beside her. We really did it. We survived, Yunji corrected. That's not the same as winning. But it's a start. Far out in Concord space, Verith watched the reports with something humans might have called frustration. The blockade had failed. The pressure campaign had failed. Humanity had not only survived but grown stronger, more unified. His advisors suggested escalation, but Verith knew that was pointless now. The moment the human fleet had appeared at New Jiangju, everything changed. They'd demonstrated a capability no Concord species possessed. They could be everywhere at once. More importantly, they'd demonstrated will. They wouldn't surrender. They wouldn't compromise. They'd chosen freedom, and they'd fight to keep it. For the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Concord faced a species it couldn't control. 2 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Concord, and the galaxy looked different now. Minji sat in her office on the trade station at the edge of human space, reviewing the morning reports. 7 ships had docked overnight. 2 were human freighters. The other 5 belonged to species that had left the Concord in the months following humanity's withdrawal. The first to leave had been the soft speakers, the traders who'd secretly helped humanity during the blockade. They'd made their announcement quietly, citing philosophical differences with council policy. The second species left more dramatically, their representative walking out of the assembly hall in the middle of a session. 3 more followed over the next year. Now there were 6 independent species, not counting humanity. And more were considering it. The Valorians sent another inquiry, Minji's assistant said. They want to know about the Axiom Accords. The Axiom Accords had been Doyen's idea. Not a government, not an empire, just a framework for cooperation between sovereign species. The principles were simple: mutual respect, voluntary association, free trade, and collective security. Any species could join. Any species could leave. There was no council, no central authority to impose rules. Send them the standard information package, Minji said. And invite their representatives to visit. Let them see how it works in practice. How it worked was surprisingly well. The 7 species in the Accords traded freely, shared technology, and supported each other. When pirates threatened a soft speaker convoy, human patrol ships responded. When a human colony needed specialized medical equipment, the Valorians manufactured it. No regulations required this cooperation. It happened because it made sense. Tajin's research division had become the most productive in human history. Without Concord regulations limiting what they could develop, his teams were innovating at an incredible pace. The quantum communication network was just the beginning. They developed new shield technologies, more efficient engines, and manufacturing techniques that reduced resource requirements by 40%. We advance faster without the Concord holding us back, Tajin explained to a visiting scientist from a newly independent species. The council was so afraid of disruption, so focused on maintaining stability, that they discouraged innovation. We don't have that problem. But, doesn't that lead to chaos? The scientist asked. Sometimes. We've had failures, accidents, setbacks. But, we learn from them and move forward. That's better than stagnating. Captain Sunho's ship, the Horizon, led humanity's exploration efforts into previously uncharted space. The Concord had mapped most of the galaxy but rarely ventured into regions they considered unprofitable or dangerous. Human explorers had no such hesitation. New system detected, Hannah reported from her sensor station. 4 planets, 2 in the habitable zone. Signs of mineral deposits on the 3rd planet. Mark it for detailed survey, Sunho said. How many is that this month? 15 new systems. 6 with potential for colonization. Space was vast. The Concord controlled maybe 5% of the galaxy, and they thought that was impressive. Humanity was learning just how much room there was to grow beyond the Concord's borders. But, not everything was perfect. The Concord economy had slowed significantly without human productivity and innovation. Several member species were openly complaining about the decline in quality of manufactured goods. Trade disputes were becoming common. 3 species had border conflicts that the Council seemed unable to resolve. Verith watched his civilization crumble slowly from within and knew something had to change. The message arrived on a secure channel to Doyen's office. It came from a Torvin diplomat, not Verith himself, but the meaning was clear. A faction within the Concord wanted to reform. They'd seen what humanity had built with the Axiom Accords. They wanted something similar. It's a trap, Hyun said immediately when Doyen shared the message. Maybe. Or maybe it's genuine. Either way, we shouldn't trust them. Doyen called a Security Council meeting. The debate was intense. Some argued for engagement, others for continued isolation. Isil surprised everyone by supporting dialogue. We didn't leave the Concord to hide from them forever, she said. We left because they tried to control us. If they're willing to meet as equals, we should listen. And, if they're not, someone asked. Then, we walk away again. But, from a position of strength this time. The summit was scheduled for a human station at the border of human space, not in Concord territory. That was non-negotiable. Humanity would engage, but, on their own terms. Verith attended personally, bringing a small delegation. He'd changed somehow, Jaiwan noticed. Less arrogant, more thoughtful. The weight of watching his civilization decline seemed to have affected him. Ambassador Jaiwan, he said formally. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. We're curious about what you have to say, Speaker Verith. Nothing more. The discussions lasted for 3 days. Verith and his delegation presented their proposal for Concord reform. They wanted to restructure the council, giving more voice to younger species. They wanted to reduce central authority, allowing member species more independence. They wanted to encourage innovation instead of suppressing it. In other words, Doyen said, you want to become more like the Axiom Accords. Yes, Verith admitted. What you've built in 2 years, we should have built 2,000 years ago. We became comfortable, stagnant. We forgot that the galaxy rewards adaptability, not stability. Why should we help you reform? Jaiwan asked. We left because reform from within seemed impossible. Because isolating the Concord serves no one, Verith said. We have resources, knowledge, established relationships with species you haven't encountered. You have innovation, energy, new perspectives. Working together as equals benefits everyone. As equals, Hyun repeated. Not as your protected species. Not as useful labor. Verith looked uncomfortable, his crystalline form refracting light in sharp angles. I said those things. I believed them. I was wrong. Your withdrawal proved that. You didn't need our protection. You didn't need our guidance. You needed freedom to be yourselves. No agreements were reached during the summit, but a framework was established for future cooperation. The Concord would reform itself, adopting principles similar to the Axiom Accords. Humanity would consider limited cooperation, but would not rejoin as a member. We'll work with the Concord, Doyen announced after the summit. But, we work with them the way we work with any species. As partners, not subordinates. 20 years later, Isul stood on the same observation deck where she'd once watched the standoff at New Jiangju. She was retired now, her iron-gray hair turned fully white. But, she'd been invited to speak at the anniversary celebration. Below her, the station bustled with activity. Ships from 30 different species came and went. Human vessels, yes, but also soft speaker traders, Valorian medical ships, and even some Concord freighters. The galaxy had changed. The Concord had reformed, though not completely. They still had a council, but it was smaller, less powerful. Member species had real autonomy now. Some had left anyway, preferring the Axiom Accords' complete independence. Others stayed, finding the reformed Concord acceptable. Humanity had never rejoined. They didn't need to. The galaxy came to them. Jaiwan joined Isul on the observation deck. The former ambassador was older too, but still sharp, still active in diplomatic circles. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd surrendered? Jaiwan asked. Sometimes. We'd probably be comfortable. Safe. Controlled. Do you regret the choice? Isul looked out at the ships, at the thriving station, at the evidence of human success spread across the stars. Not for a second. We proved something important that day we left. What's that? That freedom is worth the risk. That dignity matters more than safety. That sometimes, the only way to change a system is to walk away from it. A young officer approached them, saluting Isul. Admiral, they're ready for your speech. Isul followed her to the auditorium. Thousands of people were gathered, human and alien alike. She looked at their faces and remembered the fear, the uncertainty, the long nights wondering if they'd made the right choice. 20 years ago, she began, humanity faced an impossible decision. Submit to control, or choose freedom and face the consequences. We chose freedom. Not because it was easy. Not because we were certain of success. But because some things are worth fighting for. She paused, looking around the room. The Concord thought we needed them. They thought we'd collapse without their support, their protection, their guidance. They were wrong. We didn't need the Concord. We needed ourselves. Our courage, our innovation, our determination to chart our own path. The audience listened quietly. Some had lived through those years. Others had only heard the stories. But, here's what I want you to remember, Isul continued. We didn't destroy the Concord. We didn't seek revenge. We simply walked away and built something better. We showed them there was another way, and, eventually, they learned. That's the real victory. Not defeating an enemy, but proving that your principles work. After the speech, Isul and Jaiwan returned to the observation deck. A message was waiting, an official communication from the reformed Concord Council. Verith had retired years ago, but the current council wanted to acknowledge the anniversary. The message was simple: 20 years ago, humanity's departure was the greatest gift the Concord never deserved. You showed us what we had become, and gave us the chance to become something better. Thank you. Jaiwan read it and smiled. Do you think they really learned? Some did. Not all. But, enough. Isul looked out at the stars. The galaxy is big enough for many approaches to civilization. The Concord has theirs. We have ours. Others will develop their own. What matters is that we all have the freedom to choose. A human freighter undocked from the station, its engines glowing as it accelerated toward a hyperspace jump point. Behind it, 3 ships from other species followed, heading out on a joint exploration mission. The galaxy was opening up, full of possibilities. The council went too far, Jaiwan said quietly. And we walked away. And built something better, Isul finished. That's the lesson. When faced with tyranny, even polite tyranny, people always have a choice. Submit or walk away. We walked away. And we showed everyone watching that freedom is possible if you're brave enough to take it. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching ships come and go, watching the future unfold. Humanity had come to the stars seeking friends and found masters instead. So they'd walked away and built the friendship they were looking for. Not with everyone, but with those who understood what partnership really meant. The Concord still existed, reformed and changed. The Axiom Accords thrived, growing stronger each year. And humanity stood at the center of it all, not as rulers, but as the species that had proved freedom was worth the risk. 20 years ago, they'd walked away from safety and chose uncertainty instead. It had been the right choice. It would always be the right choice.